Hello there, and thank you for tuning in to see what the world looks like through atheist eyes. I'm Frank Zindler from American Atheist Press, and once again today I will be your host for another program dedicated to showing the world what it looks like to atheists and other skeptics and free thinkers. Today's program, entitled Dustin Lawson, the Author, will be the fifth and final in a series of interviews I've had the pleasure of conducting with Dustin Lawson, an amazing man whose career has shifted from being a professional trainer of lions and tigers to being a preacher, an understudy to the famous evangelical apologist Josh McDowell, and then to being a God-free author of novels and nonfiction works. He now joins us in our effort to bring reason to the world and to bring the world to reason. Let's listen now to a discussion of what Dustin Lawson is trying to accomplish as an author and get a glimpse of the books he has written so far. Welcome back to our interview with Dustin Lawson, former tiger trainer, evangelist, and now a novelist. In the previous installment, Dustin told us just a little bit about his first novel, Christian Agnostic, or was it a novel?
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. It's nonfiction, yes. Nonfiction. Christian Agnostic. But then he went on to write fiction. And he is an extremely creative, he's a very creative man. So we're going to talk with him now about these other books that he has written. Okay, take it away, Dustin.
Well, the first novel I wrote is Eden Found. And I got the idea for this book when I thought one day, Jesus' story, true or not, is the story of the one sinless man in a world full of sinners. But what if the story was reversed and it was the one sinner in a world of sinless people? And so I set about trying to come up with a context for how that would work. And so I went to the Garden of Eden and said, okay, Adam and Eve don't eat the forbidden fruit. Mm-hmm. And the book opens about 70 years into Eden's existence, and there's a few hundred sinless people. No one's eaten the forbidden fruit. And then one person gives in. So he becomes the one sinner in a world of sinless people. And I thought, okay, after that, he flees Eden, hoping that he can keep sin out of the garden, because he does this in secret at night, when everyone else is not around. And so he flees Eden in hopes that if he gets out of the garden before interacting with anybody else, he'll have kept sin out of the garden. Probably doesn't work out that well. So I needed to create a world outside of Eden. So I thought, just trees, forest, whatever. But to advance the nature of the book and to make it more, the controversy raised even more, the world outside of Eden I call Valdar, which is the last three letters of survival and the first three letters of Darwin. Because Valdar, the Garden of Eden, was run on the principles of creationism. The world outside of Eden has been formed through evolution.
Yeah, evolution is wicked, I know. Ken Ham is always saying it's evil.
Yes, Ken Ham. Anyway, but so there's four rivers that run through Valdar, the four rivers of I mentioned in the Bible, the Tigris, Euphrates, the Pishon, and the Gihon. Mm-hmm. And in between each river is a different climate. So we have Arctic, we have the savanna, we have tropics, we have desert, and we have the temperate climate. So that we have all of the animals and creatures that we have come to know in the present and throughout prehistoric times and Jurassic times and on back and back. And the whole goal of Valdar is to evolve, just to continuously evolve and evolve. So it's brutal, it's survival of the fittest. And so once he eats forbidden fruit, there's what's over Eden called Innocence Guard, which is basically like an invisible force field of sorts that just keeps anything from leaving sinless Eden and anything from getting in. But once he eats the forbidden fruit and the first sinner leaves, the two worlds now can come into collide and come into conflict. And the next day, Adam realizes what's happened, that Eden has fallen, everyone has become sinful, because once one falls, it's a domino effect, they all become sinners. And so it's his mission to restore sinless Eden, whereas Eve and some others are wondering, I kind of like the knowledge of good and evil, even with some pain. And so it becomes a battle of, he goes and tries to find the first human sitter to bring him back to try and regain what was lost, but it's a battle between whether life is better with the knowledge of good and evil or better without.
Mm-hmm.
Does the pain make life better because you have a higher level of intelligence, you appreciate things more because they don't last, or is the ignorance better of the stagnant of not really being creative, because creativity kind of springs out of pain in a way, and the ability to be creative in that way. So yeah, it's basically has everything in it you could want. It has a garden full of people who are naked and really good looking. Lots of violence, lots of philosophy, theology, interesting characters about every creature, from dinosaurs to saber-toothed tigers to regular tigers to every animal you can think of now that we know in it. And it is a battle between creationism and evolution, a battle between angels and demons, a battle between sin and sinlessness. And ultimately, it's just question marks. I don't want to. I write novels because I don't want to tell people what to think. I just want to create an environment that causes you to think. So.
Now, this and all of your other books are available on Amazon. Is that right?
They are. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think that I'm hoping that our viewers will want to check out some of these books.
And I'm currently trying to sell the television rights to Eden Found. Sending out my treatment to trying to get 50 in the next month, different producers. But the next novel is even more personal. It's called The God-Fearing Atheist, and the premise is that a man was born with multiple personality disorder.
Oh, this is wonderful. This is incredible.
As he grows up, one personality becomes an atheist and the other one becomes a believer in God, so that within the same person is both a believer and a doubter. And in chapter 1, he dies. He offs himself. And chapter 2, it's his court case outside the gates of heaven. How does a soul that has within it both an atheist and a believer judged? And they can't come to a conclusion on where to send him, because they can't send him to hell because he's got a believer, and they can't let him into heaven because there's an atheist. So the atheist half becomes the first atheist ever to be given the chance after death to believe in God and it count in his favor. But even standing outside the gates of heaven, the atheist refuses to believe. He still says something ain't right about this. And so a fallen angel who then tried to get back into heaven but wasn't allowed back in, so has been trying to earn his way back in, Dorian, trying to earn his way back into heaven by standing in the courtroom on behalf of souls, is then tasked with trying to convince the atheist half to believe in God so they can be let in. So he goes back to Earth and tries to figure out more about this guy to know how best to talk to him. And that's the premise of that. And he's given a very small time frame to do that, to try and convince him.
I love the thesis. This is delicious. Okay, and what's the next one?
The next one, short one, about 110 pages, is called Playing for Truth. And if you've seen the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner and James Earl Jones, that's kind of where I got the idea for this, only it's basketball, not baseball. This story begins with a guy named Devin Todd who is struggling through existential struggles, and he keeps wondering which is the path to truth, the path of faith or the path of doubt. And he can't figure it out which way to go to find truth. And so eventually he starts hearing these voices, dozens of different voices saying, go to the court and your question will be answered. And eventually he gives in, leaves his apartment, walks through the city to the edge of town, meets the forest, and there is a rundown basketball court. And he walks to the center of court, and there, out of the city, walks famous skeptics of history, philosophers, beginning with the writer of Ecclesiastes, Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and then out of the forest walks the founders of different religions, from Abraham and Moses to Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad. And they're Team Faith, and the skeptics are Team Doubt.
Oh, so
and
we
they
have two
say
basketball teams.
to Devin, we're going to play a game to decide which is the path for you to take, and you're going to be the referee. And throughout each quarter, some founders of each of the religions go out, and new ones come in, and some skeptics go out, and other skeptics come in, and it follows history. So we start with the earliest founders of religions and the earliest skeptics that we know of, and it goes right up to the present 20th century with people like Carl Sagan and Christopher Hitchens on the last team of the skeptics, and then Ron Hubbard and Joseph Smith on the other team.
He doesn't have me in this book because he knows I couldn't dunk.
Well, you have to be dead.
I have to be. Oh, I have to be dead.
So
oh
be
well,
glad you're not in this
I
book.
don't feel so bad then.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
why
insulted
Christopher Hitchens
anymore.
was the last
I'm
one.
not insulted anymore. That's fine. Thank you for clarifying
Yes,
that.
you have to be dead. So yeah, they play a basketball game against each other, and they trash talk with each other, and a lot of their trash talk, especially Voltaire is one of the best at it, using their famous lines from history.
Yeah.
And definitely ain't going to tell you how it ends, and you definitely probably would not guess how it ends. But yeah, which is the path to playing for truth? Which is the path to truth? The path of faith or the path of doubt?
Very good. Very good.
And my latest novel is I branched off a little from religion and went to politics. It's called The Ghost of Democracy, and the premise is that the White House is haunted, and the president is the only one it haunts.
Now, you actually went back to the White House to check things out.
I did.
firsthand.
I lived in D.C. in 2009, so I was kind of going off memory because I visited the White House then, and then just gone off pictures and did some research. And then I took my manuscript about 4 or 5 months before publishing it, one of my final manuscripts, and went on another tour of the White House, which was it was kind of funny. It's supposed to take like 20 minutes, this tour. It's a walking tour. You do it yourself. But I was in there for like 2.5, 3 hours, as long as they'd let me. And the Secret Service they let me. But after about 20 minutes, they walked up. Because I'm just walking around, writing stuff down as I'm looking around. I'm tapping on the windows to gauge how thick they are. And I'm writing down where every painting is and every statue. And finally, one of the Secret Service walked up to me and said, "Are you writing a book or something, young man?" I was like, "As a matter of fact, yes, I am." I tried to hand it to him so he'd look at it, but he wouldn't touch it. He wouldn't take it out of my hands. And he's like, "Well, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask." And so I asked this. He was from Ohio, actually.
Oh,
he was from Akron. And so I asked him probably 30, 40 questions. And eventually some of the questions were questions I probably shouldn't have asked. Like one example, I asked him, does the air inside the White House come in directly from outside, or is it filtered in just in case someone drops a bomb, some kind of chemical bomb? And he played stupid like he didn't know the answer. And I kind of got the feeling I may have overstepped after asking that question. But anyway, I haven't seen them following me, but I guess that's kind of the point. You wouldn't be able to see them if they're watching you. But actually, it was a good thing I did that because I caught some factual errors.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And but it starts off in the year 2033, and the newly elected president Joshua Land. It's January 20th. He's just gone through the long inauguration, the parade, the speech, and it's like 11:30 at night. He only went to a few balls because he wanted to get to bed early so he could hit the ground running on day one. But he first wanted to go to the Oval Office by himself to have a moment to just soak up this of having was won. And he sits down to read the letter from the outgoing president, which is, I think was started by Reagan. He left a letter for Bush, and so now they all leave a written letter on the resident desk for the next guy. And he just beat this guy because it was only one-term president, so it was not the letter he expected. Basically, it was a letter that said, "Thank you for beating me." Because I couldn't handle living in this house anymore because essentially it is haunted. You won't believe that. You'll think I'm just messing with you, like this is some, like when football players pick on the younger ones when they start out, just hazing ritual, but you're going to wish that, like me. And the analogy I use is Captain Ahab with the white whale, that you went after the white whale so badly, but when you caught it, it then destroyed you, and the White House is like the white whale. You chased the White House your whole life, and now that you caught it, you're going to wish you didn't. And so that's how chapter 1 kind of ends, with him not believing it, but still kind of being hesitant about thinking that this guy was just bitter that he got beaten. But ultimately, the idea is that how do you kill a country's democracy without that country ever knowing its democracy died?
Mm-hmm.
And the ghosts, that's their job, is to subtly haunt each president into killing a little bit of democracy, but doing it so subtly and doing it in such small margins that no one really recognizes it.
So
and
it's
after 200 years,
yeah,
you realize you've been pulled away from what democracy really is, but they don't realize it because they go by a different definition, because the definition has changed to always match what it is.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, that's a real lesson for our time, isn't it? I mean, especially now, the way things are going in the election that is
I mailed it to quite a few of the senators and congressmen and governors. Basically, it's the title of the article that I mailed them was, "How do you kill a country's democracy without them knowing?" Because the best crimes are the ones where the criminal can commit the crime, and it doesn't even, no one knows he committed a crime. The murderer who can make it look like a suicide or an accident, or the thief who can cook the books to make it look like no money was taken. In the same way, the best way to kill a country's democracy is to do it without anybody knowing. Step one, just six steps of how to do this. You must convince the people of that democracy that the greatest threat to their democracy comes from an outside force, like another country, or a volatile world economy, or terrorism, because this will blind them to the reality that the greatest threats to their democracy come from within their own borders. And then once you've done that, step two, you must convince those people that in order to defeat those outward threats, the people must temporarily sacrifice a little piece of liberty.
Of course, only temporarily.
A little piece of liberty. And then once you've convinced them to give up that little piece of liberty, you must change temporary to permanent by telling them, if I give you back this liberty, there's this little piece of liberty, that threat will come back. And the people will be like, yeah, okay, you're right. It's better to be more secure and have that. It's just a little piece of liberty.
Sure.
But if you do this generation after generation, you've eventually given up a mile.
Exactly, yeah.
And then principle 3 is you must continuously change the standard of what it means to be an informed citizen. At first, in a country's new, there might not be as many issues, so you can tell the people, by all means, research deeply on these issues so that you have a good understanding. But as the country becomes more complex, convince the people that, look, there's just too much here, you don't have the time to truly be informed on each issue, so just read a summary on it. And once you've done that, then tell them, okay, just go with a soundbite on each issue and define what you believe on that stance by just that soundbite. And then continually water it down so that they're just going completely off emotion, not caring at all about actually studying each issue. And then, and the goal is to do this so gradually that people still think they're informed when they're really not. The goal is for them to mistake their ignorance for knowledge. That is maybe that's so essential to killing a country's democracy, because Thomas Jefferson said, if a country wishes to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, they want what never was and what never will be. And there's lots of warnings for history for each one of these points. So you have to hide these warnings from the people to keep them from being able to see this. And then number 4, you have to continuously change the definition of democracy so that it always reflects what the government currently is, so that even if it's not really a democracy according to a definition from 50 years ago, it is a democracy because it's according to that definition. It's a fluid definition, and if people catch this and say, hey, wait a minute, you can use a warning from history in this case. And Thomas Jefferson said, if you don't change the Constitution every 30 years, you enslave the next generation. So you could say, look, a democracy has to fit the culture, because we always like to say in diplomacy that we want a country to be democracy, but a democracy that fits their country's culture, so it won't look just like ours. So if our culture changes, convince the people that the democracy has to change as well, and so you're watering it down a little more, and the people will generally give in. And then number 5 is it's got to be slow. You can't try to kill a bunch of democracy at once, because the people might have their emotions awakened and revolt. And then number 6 is if you really are intent and proactive about wanting to kill a country's democracy without anybody knowing, this number 6 is going to be the hardest, because basically number 6 is you don't have to do anything. It'll do it all on its own. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "The natural course of things is for liberty to yield and government to gain ground." So you can just sit back and watch it happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations gave the metaphor of an invisible hand that just naturally moves the world economy.
Right. Yeah.
And in the same way, there's this invisible hand that just naturally, it's called human nature, that just naturally causes us to kill our democracies because we want freedom so badly. But the paradox is we want the freedom without responsibility. And once we have the freedom and realize how much responsibility goes with it, we start gradually giving back the freedom in order to get rid of some of the responsibility. But then once it's all taken, we want freedom back, but then we get it back, and then we realize, damn it, there's still responsibility to go with it, and so we just naturally kill it. So it just happens all on its own.
The great psychiatrist Erich Fromm wrote a book called Escape from Freedom, in which his thesis was that we willingly give up our freedom because we want somebody to tell us what to do. Because when we have to exercise freedom and make decisions, especially if they're important decisions, we instinctively know our own fallibility. And to have to make a decision in such circumstances causes anxiety. And for many people, the amount of anxiety is intolerable. And so they willingly give themselves up to the priest or to the dictator or whoever.
This is something I still deal with.
Yeah.
Because I believed, I guess the analogy I use is that to the age of 24, almost 24, I believed I was fighting this battle called life, and behind me was this army of angels and supernatural beings like God and Jesus. And so I could go in the cage with lions and tigers confidently. I could get on a stage in front of thousands of people confidently. I could stare down cancer confidently. But then there at age 24 almost, I finally, in the heat of the battle, in the middle of the battlefield, fighting against all the things that go on in life, I looked over my shoulder and didn't see anything there. And realized, oh my God, I'm fighting this battle myself probably. And so there's this hesitation because I missed that single-minded focus that it gave me, and that confidence that it gives. I used this. LeBron James, he just led Cleveland to the NBA Finals championship, won a championship for the first time for Cleveland in 52 years. He said that when he was down 3-1, no team in the NBA Finals has ever come back from a 3-1 deficit, but they did. And he in the interview after winning Game 7 in the championship, he said, "The thing that got me through it is that I always told myself the man upstairs doesn't give you more than you can handle." And so he's like, I'm down 3-1, but it's not more than I can handle. And he won Game 5, Game 6. And I'm like, that is some bad logic, but I'm glad he went with it and it worked for him. And this is why it's bad logic, because if God doesn't give you more than he can handle, what about the Golden State Warriors that you just beat? He gave them more than they can handle. They pissed off LeBron James. They couldn't handle you. So I'm glad he had bad logic because he won a championship, but that's the kind of logic I used to have as well. And then once I lost that logic and realized, okay, I was like, now I come to the fork in the road, and I can't see the future, so of no fault, I just have to choose a path. So it makes it more difficult. I miss that, but as Carl Sagan said, better the hard truth than the comforting fantasy, and I agree.
Very good.
So.
Okay, I sure hope everybody, if you only buy one of Dustin's books, I hope you'll get The Ghost of Democracy. It goes without saying that at this particular point in American history, the lessons here are extremely relevant, and I think we all need to be thinking about this kind of thing. Okay, you have one last little booklet.
Yes, The Fundamentals of Free Thinking. This is only like 30 pages, and it's nonfiction. I just felt the need to write down the standards by which I search for truth now, to kind of contrast the way I used to search for truth as a preacher with the way I search for truth now. And so I formulated some 10 principles of how I basically how I search for truth now. Like now, I challenge my own beliefs just as much, if not more, than everybody else's beliefs, because I want to weed out the fallacies in my own logic more. So I actually appreciate it when someone challenges me and tells me to prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it is not a sinful phrase.
That's right, yeah.
To go up to a preacher and say, prove it, is not wrong. That's a righteous thing to do.
It's not a hostile act.
Right. It's not, by all means, welcome it.
Yeah.
But the only reason you wouldn't welcome it is because you know you can't prove your beliefs. And so, yeah, just very succinct, 1 to 2 pages for each principle. And like to go along with the epistemological rim analogy, one of the principles is the standard and the search for truth. Well, sorry. Here we go. Standards for truth don't change to fit ideas. Ideas have to have evidence that meet the standard if they want to be considered truth. That's just the basketball rim doesn't lower to fit your beliefs. Yeah. Your beliefs have to be able to jump high enough, have good enough evidence to dunk on the credible standard.
All right, I told you at the beginning that this was a very extraordinary person that I have as a guest, and I think by now we have amply demonstrated that fact. Thank you, Dustin, for these interviews, and I hope we'll be able to have you on the show again sometime, maybe after your next book. I'm sure you'll have something really, really exciting that you're going to create. I think your creative juices are starting to bubble. What?
Would you like to hear a premise for one?
Okay, all right.
Okay, this one is definitely out there, but it's been fun. It's been fun to work on. It's called pornhibition.
Pornhibition.
Okay? Pornhibition, not prohibition. Pornhibition.
Okay.
Prohibition was the 1920s, trying to get rid of alcohol. Pornhibition is the premise of a preacher whose wife catches him looking at internet porn. And she shames him by telling him to watch the video of his favorite female porn star while she stands there. And he is so ashamed of this video playing with his wife there. And afterwards he's like, I have to do something radical to show her. And so what he does is he recruits a former computer hacker out of his congregation who has been reformed and now uses his talents as a computer programmer to now hack into internet porn sites and try to take them down. And he shows his wife, look what we did to show you I'm done with this. And she's like, that's good. It's a pretty good idea. I think we need to expand this. And so they recruit more and more Christian computer hackers and have an underground team trying to take down internet porn. And it definitely, as you can be sure, the Larry Flints and Hugh Hefners of the world are not very happy with this, and so they definitely come back with their own array of weapons.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't wait to read that one. Well, thank you again, Dustin. And as I said, I hope after this next book comes out, we'll be able to talk to you again.
Yes, definitely.
That's all for now, and I'm not sure what the next program is going to be. You'll have to tune in and see. That's all for now. I'm Frank Zindler for American Atheists.